Welcome to yet another installment of Heads Up. Today, we're gonna be going heads up against feminists and thought logic. It's been a problem, and with the ever increasing role that women are having in society, which I'm not saying is good nor bad for the sake of this discussion. I'm just simply commenting on it. But we got more women in academia now. We got women invading male dominant professions, and while that may be a positive thing, there are some inherent drawbacks associated with that shit that we need to look into. We need to actually think about and highlight because all women ain't cut out for this shit, man. Women say a lot of dumb shit and they think because they've done something that men do that like they can do everything that men do at the level men do it. And it's just that's a fallacy. It's false. I don't know in what world you think that shit works, but it's not this world. So without further ado, I found this clip on YouTube. We'll give credit to whoever at the end of it, but says feminists making a fool of themselves for 10 minutes. And it's just, I watched a little bit of it to begin with, but it was so outrageous. Like, I do most of my best work on the fly, so I figured we have to watch this shit together. So let's get it cracking, shall we?
Trisha, what is the
So dumb.
Trisha, what is the force that causes objects to fall to the ground?
Girl, you better.
I know this because my titties are low thanks to gravity.
Yeah.
All right, so it's like, I get it. Like, she's probably like Playboy Bunny or some shit like that, or she's like, that's sex gift or whatever, but like, just come on, because my titties are low. Like, what guy looks at that and is like, oh my god, that's so hot. Like, your titties are low because of gravity. I love fucking gravity. Like, nobody says that. Like, it's just real. It's just real. Ugh, man. Like, I don't want to hear that. Not from a girl. Like, if that's all you got to offer, why are you mad when that's all I want? I guess that's how I feel about that shit.
Hey, a
But we
personal anecdote.
Can we just also say we don't actually need gravity? But that's a different thing.
What
Like,
do you mean by
I
that?
saw someone do this. Was this a TikTok? We were watching something where someone's like, we don't actually need gravity. We were watching this with me. Like, we actually don't need it.
What do you mean that we don't need gravity?
What if it was never invented?
Invented by who?
Sir Isaac Newton.
Okay, so right here, what she just did is she conflated an invention with a discovery. So, like, just because you discover something doesn't mean you invented it. Without even having to look the words up, I can tell you the difference between discoveries and inventions right now. Like, when you discover something, that means it was already there and you were the first one to notice it. When you invent something, it means it wasn't previously there and you brought it to reality. So like if you invented a floating car, that means prior to that invention there were no floating cars. So no one could discover something that wasn't present. If you discovered floating cars, that means somewhere already floating cars exist that was unbeknownst to everyone and you came along and found it. Big difference. So when she says Sir Isaac Newton invented gravity, like I'm sure like some people have said that, worded that way. That's probably how they taught it in school, but like he didn't invent gravity. Like gravity was holding him down to the earth. The force known as gravity, I should say, was holding him down to the earth prior to his discovery. It was always there. Nobody had just ever acknowledged it in the fashion that he did. So let's hear more of this nonsense.
Isaac Newton created gravity.
Whoever created gravity, someone did, but we don't actually need it.
There
Like,
was
we
a
could have
time
just
on
all.
there was a time on Earth before gravity existed.
Yes. Who created gravity, babe? Dan.
It was Isaac Newton. You're right.
You were
I'm
in the
over it.
right ballpark. Sir Isaac Newton perhaps first defined and discovered
Maybe-
gravity. He
What do you
didn't
mean we don't
invent
need gravity? I'm curious about that
We just
statement.
don't need it.
But like, what do you mean?
The moon doesn't have gravity.
It does. All bodies, all.
Did you hear that person in the back say, "Oh boy"? Like, I'm sorry, that's just like, "Oh boy." Oh, for fuck's sake, man, hang on.
I'm curious about that
We just
statement.
don't need it.
But like, what do you mean?
The moon doesn't have gravity.
It does. All bodies, all celestial, all bodies,
All
you have
mass.
gravity.
Anything with
In
mass
fact,
has gravity.
in fact, some would say you have a sizable amount of gravity.
What's that mean? I'm fat? You're calling me fat
Yeah.
now.
Wait, you're calling me fat now. You're calling me fat now. Yeah. Ugh, that affectation, like I can't tolerate it. Like nobody talks that way. After now you're doing that? Like, oh my God. Like, it don't take seconds to say the word God. Like, you can just say God. You don't have to be like, oh my God. And like elongate it and stretch it out. Like, now it's an announcement. It's supposed to be a word. You turned it into a damn a memorandum. Ugh, I can't stand the way she talks, her fucking voice. Like, how can I focus on your tits if you talking? Like, if you talking, my mind is focusing on muting your voice. So it's like the big tits don't do anything at that point. At that point, you're just you a head on a stick. Like you're a hot scarecrow. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, attractive. Thank you, Moses.
Well, you're fat.
We've got quite a large pay dispute happening with our Australian women's soccer
This would be
team
good.
at the
I've seen this
moment.
before.
Is it frustrating for you as someone who's so prominent in your sport? And
I thank God the crowd was way out in front of this, but that just lets you know, like, people can sniff out a feminist agenda. Nah, I'll run it back so you can hear the question in full, but like, so whatever is finna come up next is about the alleged, well, the pay gap between men and women, which exists, but no one wants to talk about why. So I'll shut up.
frustrating for you as someone who's so prominent in your sport, and we heard you say on the Ellen show the other day you are the richest fighter in UFC, that sort of thing is still going on?
I think that how much you get paid should have something to do with how much money you bring in.
Now, see, this is profound. Like, no one has ever hypothesized ever that when it comes to splitting the cut, whoever brings in the most money or gets the most money. This is a novel concept. Like, back in the day, the people who used to do the least amount of work took a lion's share of the profit because there was nobody around to distribute the pay. Like, nobody understood. Like, we got all this money and like we don't know how to divvy it up. So let's take the people who brought the least of it in and give them the most of the money because, Robin Hood. Because that makes sense, right? It's like, no, like if you want a bigger piece of the pie, you gotta fucking, bring more of the ingredients to the the batter that becomes the pie. Like, you gotta finance some of that shit. You gotta take part. You can't just not do a lion's share and get a lion's share. And you're like, what? Like, is Jeff Bezos supposed to pay all his employees $100 an hour and like pay himself what, $250,000 a year? When he did all the shit he was the impetus that got Amazon to where it is now. Is he just supposed to just, you know, give the people who keep it going, not the ones who got it there? Like, doesn't make sense, as do most things that, these people say.
I'm the highest paid fighter, not because Dina and Lorenzo wanted to do something nice for the ladies. They do it because I bring in the highest numbers. They do it because I make them the most money. And I think that the money that they make should be proportionate to the money that they bring in.
Because that's all guys.
Once again, that's a real novel concept. Like, she was the first person to ever suggest that the portion of revenue that you gain should be based on the revenue. And no one has ever thought of that before Ronda Rousey. So, just keep that in mind when you're thinking the dumb shit I've said in the past 60 seconds.
Guys want. All guys want is pussy.
Yeah.
Swear
What?
to God.
What?
No. Let me rephrase that. Shitty men want pussy, and that's all they want from you. Hire guys that are worth more, that will benefit your life more. They're not just gonna want pussy from you, and that's a fact.
Or could it be that
That's all you have
the
to
men
offer?
that only want sex from women is because that's all that the women have to offer?
How did I guess you were going to say that, Brian? I started to go to the Whatever podcast strictly for this, but I'm like, I know if I just find it, every podcast is chock full of good examples of airheaded women. And some not airheaded women too. Like, they don't always have just bimbos on there, but if you just go to Google and type in just bimbos talking, like, you'll get an avalanche of the Whatever podcast, because that's what the fuck it is. It's just a bunch of bimbos talking. Like, they're not ever really saying shit, that's useful to anybody anywhere that exists on the planet. You know, when she say, yeah, all shitty men want from you is pussy. And it's like, all shitty men want from you is whatever you have to give. You know, like whatever you have to give. Like shitty men don't bring anything to the table. They bring up the picture of the table that they saw in the magazine before they actually bought it. Like that's what shitty men have. And then you order it, and then you wonder why your shipping's delayed, and and then you find out the shit is coming from fucking Hong Kong, and it's got to make a stop in Saudi Arabia, and then it's got to get ported over to London before it gets to LA, and then goes to Dallas, and then goes to Illinois, and then gets to you in Ohio. When you're like, why didn't it just go to New York and go to Ohio? Because fuck you, that's why. You know, this shit just it all shitty men want to do is take. The non-shitty men who ain't just interested in your pussy understand that like pussy's everywhere. Like if you got $50 in your pocket, you can get laid. Like I've said that before. So it's like good men don't they want they like they understand that beauty is easily achievable. Like you can put lipstick on a pig, and there's some guy out there who want to fuck that pig. So like it works. It's effective. So it's like, how do I see through this shallow exterior? How do I make sure that you're not just a boob on a stick? How do I know that there's some substance to you? And if you don't have any substance, then I'm just gonna take the physical, which is that little fish box you got, and I'm gonna keep it the fuck stepping, because that's just, I don't have time for the inherent headaches associated with you, but I do have time to bust your back out a little bit. That's, you might not like to hear it, but that's the reality of it, people.
Because for me, if pussy is all you're offering, pussy is all I want.
Yeah.
Just like, you know what? How many times you've gotten to a club into VIP for free when some ugly chicks had to pay full price?
Kevin
Is that
Samuels.
my fault?
No. I've asked how many times it happened.
Okay, I've seen this one before too. So since it's the late great Kevin Samuels here, we're gonna heavily analyze this one. So I'm gonna run it back to the very beginning, like just before it got there, and I'm gonna break down all the strategies, especially because this chick, she was a super feminist. I'm gonna tell you already, like the one thing they always do is once you checkmated them on their argument, they always leave. They always end a discussion. They pack their bags and they get the fuck on, because it's like how if your home team's getting blown out by 36, you don't stay till the end of regulation. Your ass is leaving at midway through the third. That's what they do. They're not even brave enough to stick around for the L. So let's
Offering pussy is all I want.
dissect this.
Yeah.
Just like, you know what? How many times you've gotten to a club into VIP for free when some ugly chicks had to pay full price?
Now listen to that question. How many times have you gotten to the club for free when some ugly chicks had to pay for a price? Now, she knows that in order to answer that question, she has that she's prettier than other girls who have to pay to get in the club when she gets in for free because she's hot. And that goes against her egalitarian paradigm. So she knows that's a trap question. So what does she do? She dodges it. She reframes it somehow.
Is that my fault?
Is that my fault? So let's just assume there was no question mark on the end of that statement, that it was a period. Is that my fault? So if I may infer on what you mean when you say, is that my fault? Like, so you're saying that it's likely to be true that you've gotten in the club for free while some ugly girls have had to pay to get in the same club at the same time. So you're saying, is that your fault? First of all, nobody said it was. Second of all, answer the question, how many times has it ever happened to you? If you're saying, is that my fault? You're not denying it. So if you're not denying it, there's room to assume that you are saying yes. Yes, you are. You have gotten into the club when some ugly girls have had to pay. Is it your fault? No, it's not your fault. But the reason it's not your fault was not your fault. The reason you get into the club while these ugly girls have to pay is because you won the genetic lottery in the beauty department. Like you're a decent looking female. And we all know to whatever degree, like good looking girls get perks per se from men who find them attractive. Like there's a girl at the bar, she might get a dollar extra tip or whatever than if it was a guy at the bar. If she's wearing like a cleave, if she enhances her goods in a way to where it's like it's suggestive, but it's not definitive. So we all know women can do that. So saying, is that my fault, is dodging the question and admitting it at the same time.
No. I've asked how many times it happened before you go down that path.
I mean, plenty of times in Miami.
Exactly, but that's not fair, is it?
Well, please don't forget I'm not from here.
But that's not fair, is it? Well, please don't forget that I'm not from it. So, like, what? Forget that you're not from where? Okay, so you said it's happened plenty of times, and you know it's not fair. Wait, and you won't say it's not fair. Please don't forget to. Is it fair? Or is it not fair?
But that's not the point, ma'am. That's not fair, is it?
I also don't care about those things.
Anything besides answering the question. Like, you just won't answer simple questions. When people won't answer simple questions, like, but that's not fair, is it? I mean, it's either no or I can't decide for whatever reason. There is no, I don't care about that. Also, since you don't care, it's no longer a valid question. You think the validity of the question is hinged upon your interest in it? That doesn't work. If that's the case, you don't have to talk about anything you're not interested in. And if that's the case, every conversation with you is one-sided. So why even fucking talk to you? If you don't like what you're going to hear, you're just going to sidestep any meat of the conversation in exchange for you not having to talk about something you don't want to talk about. And quite frankly, who gives a shit about you that much? You're not that special.
But so you only care about fairness when it doesn't benefit you.
I just don't go to clubs that often.
But that's not the point.
Yeah, now you just don't go to clubs that often because you're missing the general point for the specific point. Yeah, he used that specific example to highlight the unfairness. To focus on the fact that he's talking about, well, I don't go to clubs that often. It's like, it's not about the clubs. It's about the fact that it's not fair that you as a hot girl get into clubs for free when women that aren't have to pay. And you don't care about that unfairness. Like, that part of unfairness, it benefits you for it to be unfair to the ugly chick, so you don't care. But if it was your turn, you'd be offended by it. You know, you don't care when the unfairness doesn't detriment you. But if it does, now you have something to say about it. That's feminism 101.
Point. I asked you, how many times you've gone to a club where you got in for free, where ugly chicks or less attractive chicks had to pay? And you know that's happened. You didn't say, I'm still, excuse me, sir. Even though I'm attractive, I demand that you charge me full price. You're okay with the double standards that benefit you. But the ones you don't like, you just throw at the wind, use sign language, shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right to deflect and dismiss guys who are normally
sign language, shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right. I don't remember that. Shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right. Sign language. Oh, good shit.
Intimidated by this thing. I'm not. I'm just challenging your positions.
Highly-
You're okay with it not being fair when it benefits you.
Michael, do you know what the leading cause of death for pregnant people is?
Pregnant people?
Mm-hmm.
Mothers? Women?
If you'd like to call them mothers, not all of them are mothers, but
I've also seen this too. Great Michael Knowles. So this woman is refusing to address pregnant people as mothers, seeing as how like women are the only people that can get pregnant, and it doesn't matter what you have to say about that. Like, there is no sentence crafted that can affect the tangible, objective, biological reality that only female XX chromosome can have children. That's if you're not that, it's not happening for you. I don't give a damn how much sperm you take up the ass. It's not happening. You can't have kids. Sorry. But if you ask her, she's got an explanation for that, for why that biological fact is bogus. Let's listen.
if you'd like to call them that.
What are they if they're not mothers?
They're pregnant people.
What people other than mothers are pregnant?
Does it bother you to use inclusive language?
What people other than mothers get pregnant? The simple answer to that would be the answer to the question, like, these people X, Y, Z. Do you have a problem using inclusive language? Please answer my question. If you're gonna get your question answered, you gotta ask mine. My question came in the queue first. You need to answer my question, because it's like, what people get pregnant other than mothers is like, if you are averse to answering that question, it's because you know the answer to it undermines something that you hold dearly. So let's cut the bullshit, shall we?
Well,
It's just interesting
I
because-
prefer to use precise language.
It's interesting because you come into this conversation, trying to hold this moral superiority, but then
I try to be moral when I can, but
Right, but when I use inclusive language, which it only takes a couple extra syllables to use inclusive language.
What the hell is inclusive language? What the hell is that? What is that? Inclusive language? Like, is that a language? How Spanish is a language? How Arabic is a language? How Cantonese and Mandarin are languages? Is it a language like French? Like, what do you mean inclusive language? Like, well, why are you so worried about being included in every word spoken? Like, every word that's spoken has to, we can't address a group of people without accounting for everybody in the group. So if let's say you having like, you doing like a coat, a backpack drive or whatever, and people have donated all these backpacks and coats to you to give for kids. It's like, are you not going to accept it? Is because, oh, I'm sorry, we already have 10 small coats. So if you don't give us, and we only have 6 large coats. So if you don't have a large coat, we're not going to accept it because we have to include everybody. Well, that's not really a donation like that. That actually excludes any extra people who need small. Like, you trying to focus on everybody is just not, it's not plausible. You can't focus on everybody all the time in everything. Everybody doesn't need to be included. And then using inclusive language excludes people who don't want to use inclusive language. So your inclusionary gimmick is exclusionary by default. As soon as you define something, you separate it from everything else. Even if you just say like air, you say cold air. So now hot air is excluded. I don't think it was your intent to exclude hot air. It was more your intent to focus on cold air. This is what they do. Like, inclusive language is not a thing. Inclusive language is is some form of fucking mental Down syndrome. It's verbal, like it's some shit. It's lunacy. It's, I don't want to say retarded because I wouldn't insult retarded people that way, but it's fucking something, man, and the shit's weird.
And it seems to include people who don't, identify as women but can become pregnant.
So, like a person who's born a woman and then identifies as a man and is pregnant.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that in order to be a moral person, I need to accept the idea that a man, someone who is born a man and looks like a man, can really become a woman. That's a prerequisite of my being a moral person.
I mean, yes. To me, it is, because if you are trying to deny someone of their identity and deny what their life experience is, then that doesn't seem like a moral stance to me.
Just because I deny your life experience, that has no bearing on it. Your life experience is very much so valid, but if I don't see it as valid, I have every right to deny it and every right to be wrong about denying it. Like, you can't tell me, like, if I deny your existence, or if I don't see you the way you see yourself. Like, if a damn jaguar walked up to you and somehow was able to talk and said it was an elephant, like, you would think something is wrong with the jaguar. Like, you wouldn't think, oh, this jaguar's an elephant. You would think, what the fuck is going on with this jaguar? Why it thinks it's an elephant? It's walking around trying to do that shit they do, that with the trunk and shit, that noise elephants make. Walking around, it's a jaguar though. Like, trying to like wrap its nose around shit, and it's got a static built in place nose. Like, that'd be weird as fuck. That'd be extremely strange for that to happen. So, like, if she's saying the only way you can be a moral person is just basically to deny reality for the sake of someone else's sensibilities, then we disagree. There's no further elaboration needed. In your eyes, I'm not morally upstanding, and thank God I don't rely on your viewpoint of me to like get through the day or to do anything at all, because I'd be screwed. I'd be completely fucking screwed.
I want to be accepting, and I want to respect people's life experiences and respect the way that they want to identify and respect the way that they want to present themselves to the world.
And like, yeah, you can do that, but it's like, if this is your demand of me without even knowing me, like, you don't know me and you've already got this demand of me, well, I've got a demand of you too, and you be respectful of my alignment with biological reality. I understand what's going on here. I see the circus in front of me. Like, I understand that there's a circus. I see the people on tight ropes. I see the acrobats. I see the bearded lady and the nigga eating the sword on fire. I see it all. But you can't tell me that, like, I've got it, like, that the circus is the only entertainment I'm allowed to see. Like, if I don't enjoy the circus, then like I'm inherently lesser off or negative, because if you enjoy other forms of circus, why are you excluding the circus folk? They need someone to entertain too. It's like, well, simply put, because I have a choice. I have choices and I make them. And the choice I made doesn't align with you. There's thousands of choices made every day, probably more that aren't aligned in my benefit, but they happen. So like if you give people choices, don't be mad at their choices. Simple as that. And when I ain't mad at your choice, but I'm mad at the fact that you think you can like bully me into your choice.
Bronte, I would
Yes.
like to identify, I do identify actually, as the correct person on this issue of abortion. I identify as being correct and more correct than you on this issue. And I would just ask that you accept and affirm my identity.
Well, you can already see Joe Rogan, John Anik, and DC right there, but you can already tell that like I don't know if they're gonna play it, but please say that what he said is ridiculous. But it plays into what she just said. She says she wants to make a conscious decision to accept and respect everybody's identity and the way they see themselves, and she doesn't want to take moral superiority or she doesn't want to be morally inferior by judging these people for, their delusion. So let's catch it again and get the John Anik and shit.
Identify as being correct and more correct than you on this issue. And I would just ask that you accept and affirm my identity. Do you?
Hey, Patty.
Well, you are not a medical professional, and abortion and pregnancy
No, I'm
is
just
a
talking about
medical
my identity.
concern. That's not your identity.
That is my identity.
What? Did she just misgender him? Did she? I'm confused. So it's okay for her to misgender people, but when anybody else does it, they're a bigot, they're a transphobe, they're this, they're that, they're blah blah blah. Like, just make it make sense. Make it make sense to me, please. I don't get it. Like she literally just did what she, when he says it, now she can tell somebody else what their identity is. But prior to that, you can't do that because you gotta respect everybody. The lunacy is lunacy. It's double standards. It's untenable concepts like being force fed down your throat. This shit never added up. Ever. Ever. Like what the hell?
I promise you, that's my identity.
You don't want to get married at all? You don't want a
Not
family or
yet.
children?
Yes, but in the future, but no now.
Well, you're 28, right?
Yes.
When do you want to have kids?
35 maybe?
Well, at 35, 90,
The instant ridicule. She says she wants to wait until she's 35 to have children. Well, I'm sure they just tell me I'm just a womanizing bigot who's never lived or dealt with a woman and doesn't understand women. But I understand women well enough to know that around 35 is like the age where the ability to healthily bear children as a woman, the difficulty in that is exponentially rising from that point forward. You only have a finite number of eggs as a woman. You don't just get to have, you can't be like in your 80s and be like, okay, I'm ready to have children. You gotta hope somebody wants to stick their dick in that shriveled up sack or whatever you want to call yourself, you fucking human raisin, like however you want to do it. Nobody's gonna want to impregnate you just for you to be dead upon childhood birth, kill yourself birthing a stillborn. Like who? Come on now. So the fact that she talking about she wants to wait till she's 35 to have children, first of all, men aren't going to want to fuck you like they do now. Like by the time you're 35, you're going to be less hot. Or you're either going to be equally hot or less. You're not going to get hotter. Like whatever status of hotness you have now will either plateau or will dip off. So I mean it's not even really subjective at this point. Like that's what the fuck's gonna happen. So if you want to wait until you're less viable to have children, don't be surprised if nobody wants to give you kids. Don't be,
from a biological standpoint, at 35 years old, over around 90% of your eggs are gone. And your ability to bring a child to term comes down a lot.
I don't think so. Age is a number.
Whoa. Now see, I wasn't ready for that. Now, fuck evidence. She said she doesn't think so. I know you got all these studies and science, but what about her not thinking so? Like, did y'all factor in that she don't think so? Like, yeah, I know you got facts. I know it's the truth and all, but thoughts matter. Thought lives matter. Thought lives matter. Okay, thought lives matter. And I'm not gonna let you kill my thought with your facts and logic. Fuck that. Facts don't care about my feeling. Well, they're going to today. That's her angle. Because she doesn't think so. Remember, ladies, if somebody hit you, if you don't think so, you don't need to investigate. All you gotta do is not think so. If you don't think so, why should we think so? You know, you got it, queen. You go, girl. Boo, 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 and whatever the fuck y'all be saying.
There.
I mean, you can say you don't think so, but realistically speaking, your chances of having a child bringing them to
Freeze the
term
eggs.
at 35, that doesn't work often, and it's very expensive.
I don't know. I want to enjoy my life, so I'm not ready.
Real quick about that, she wants to enjoy her life, so she doesn't think she'll be able to enjoy her life as a mother. And she thinks the alternative method to that is to be a whore or to be promiscuous or minimally promiscuous or to not be monogamous. She doesn't think she can enjoy her life as a mother because the idea of childbirth nowadays to women is tantamount to slavery, which is fucking insane. They think their moms were slaves. That's weird. Just like a plug from last minute. Well, yeah, let them have a plug.
That for teenage boys now, they are so terrified of the consequences of putting a foot out of line. It's hard enough being a young teenager, working out how things are, working out how to do dating and all of that, without the terror that if you touch in the wrong place at the wrong time, you may find that your whole life is destroyed.
See, I
and there
like
is
that
far
terror.
too much. Well,
I like that.
As a
I
mother
think
of
that
a
men
teenage
should be
boy, I
frightened.
don't like that terror.
You think that men should be frightened to touch okay, well, I think that you should be frightened of the same thing because if I do touch you, it could be like that can like break your neck or like, you know, crack a rib or something like that. Like you don't stand a chance in the realm of violence, in the realm of physicality. So like, yeah, you should be frightened for men to touch you more than men should be frightened to touch you. Because this is why you have women's spaces. Because not all men are got it all together up there, and then it might fuck you up. So you do need some defense from that. But to say you want to see men frightened, let a man say that and see what happens.
I
That's
do.
the malicious thing I've ever
That
heard.
is
I think that
awful.
men should be frightened
I think
to
you'd
touch
feel
women in a way
differently
that
if you
they're
were
not comfortable with.
But we're talking about
Yeah, but we're not talking
teenagers,
about. We're not
children.
talking about.
We're talking
yeah, but
about
it's an
young
interesting
children.
thing that you see. I would say that attitude actually is part of the problem too.
It
is that's to me toxic femininity.
It is.
That is saying you should all be terrified, you men, if you put one.
Of assaulting.
Well, I think we all understand what sexual
What is
assault
an
is.
assault?
What Isabel's talking about is that young teenage clumsiness
really
in many
hard.
cases, which is now being recategorized as assault. Is that a problem?
It's not being recategorised as assault. It's always been assault. It's just we're finally talking about it.
I don't agree with that. But I do think it's really hard for a 16, 17-year-old boy now in this environment to know even how to start
they are all
having kind of some
terrified.
kind of physical relationship with a woman.
Those good boys are all terrified. I know that from talking to my son. He's just like, I'm just not going there. Is that?
And see, and it's not so much terrified in the sense that like they are afraid to do it. They're afraid that they could make an action with good intentions and be punished for it. Like, you know, they could just be doing what they're doing as guys. Just like, you know, that's like hollering at the dog because he licks your face. Like, that's what dogs do. You cannot scald a dog for their method of showing you affection. So, like, when guys show affection, I'm not saying it's right for guys to be, like, overly touchy-feely or to be on some, you know, non-consensual shit. I'm not in any way condoning reprehensible sexual behavior on behalf of men, but, like, a motherfucker don't even get a chance. Like you could do something innocuous and get buried for it. And it's like you since you can't defend yourself from it because you can't clearly define what is and ain't, you avoid it altogether. Like that's only just logical. Like if I avoid it altogether, how can I step in some shit if I just don't walk? If I never take a step, I can't step in shit because the ground I'm on right now has no shit.
Healthy?
Yes, I think it is actually. I think it's better to not have a physical relationship than to have one that could ruin a woman's life.
But then how do they ever start?
Well, don't. If you're not 100% sure therefore,
we going
don't.
What are you going to have? A bunch of neutered boys who never
it's
had...
so obvious.
We actually
It's
do
sort
have
of
that.
like-
Gen Z is having far less sexual relationships than any ever
they
before.
are. It's true.
And I'm also interested, I mean, like Jordan, I look at the data and I look at the studies, and I'm really also very much interested in studies like the analysis that was done by the American Psychological Society, which looked at 45 analysis of whether there's sex difference over 20 years. And its conclusion was that men and women are basically alike in terms of personality, in terms of cognitive ability, in terms of leadership. But what it did find was that media depictions of men and women as fundamentally different perpetuate misconceptions, as does workplace bias.
So I pretty much know what he's gonna say here. He's probably gonna talk about damn, I forget the place, but he talk about the most egalitarian Scandinavia. He's probably gonna mention Scandinavia is the most egalitarian society, and with that being the case, men and women still gravitated to where they want to go. That's what he's gonna say. Let's see.
God, so it's my fault.
So, no, well, you're leaving soon. It's okay.
Men and women actually are more the same than they are different. But the issue is that small differences at the population level can turn into very large differences at the extreme. So, for example, men and women are broadly similar with regards to aggression, although men tilt a little bit more towards aggression. So that if you picked a random person out of the population, male and female, and you guessed that the male was more aggressive, you'd be right 60% of the time. But if you take the 1 in 100 most aggressive people, they're all male. And that's why the overwhelming proportion of people who are in prisons are male. Now, do you want to equalize that, just out of curiosity? What about bricklayers? They're 99% male. And we've got about 3/4 of the population now in universities in the humanities and social sciences are female.
Yeah.
Are we going to equalize that? And men work longer hours. They work more dangerous jobs. They're more likely to move. They're more likely to work outside. They're more likely to participate in jobs in the STEM fields that are scalable. They make more money for those reasons. And that's all hidden under the idea that the reason that men and women make different amounts of money is because of their gender.
And what that boils down to, ladies and gentlemen, is it's real fun to talk about the fact that something nobody really wants to talk about why. The why is not popular because when you start asking questions, you run the chance of stumbling upon the truth, and that makes people really uncomfortable. When you make people have to ponder facts in their mind, that's a very unsettling experience for a lot of people. And if you do that, you're going to be hated for it. You're going to be slandered for it. It's not a fun ride. It's like a roller coaster with a braided rope as the seatbelt. Like you might have fun and you might die. Who wants to play that game, man? Like this is a losing battle. The logic amongst this group is non-existent. So the simple thing to do is just not look for it. Don't look in a vacuum for substance and wisdom because you're going to find a vapid, expansive wasteland that's going to leave you worse off than you were before you got there 15 times out of 10. And if you don't believe me, go for it. I'm rooting for you.